Awesome. And we are live. So thank you everyone for joining us on this special event with a new special guest. My name is Andrew Wall, managing partner of CPA for IT, where our mission is to help our clients organize their finances, create wealth, and transform wealth into a legacy. If you're not familiar with myself or my other co-host, Eric, we specialize in serving independent consultants. And we're very blessed today to have not just an independent consultant, but a gentleman who has actually written the book on how to be an independent consultant. It's called The Consultant's Compass, and he's got over 13 years helping professionals launch their consulting careers. Who's also a former professional turned solo consultant himself. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you over to our guest host, Carlos. So Carlos, thank you for joining us today. Is there any little bit you'd like to share with the audience, a little background that makes you unique and special and able to be such an expert?
Thank you for having me, first of all. I guess not really. I mean, I'm just a professional in IT, actually in quality assurance. I've been doing this for 26 years. And 13 years ago, I had to take a decision. And I took the decision to actually become an independent consultant or a solo consultant, as I call it. And I've been going through these roads ever since. And I think it's the best decision I took for my career and from in my life.
Yeah, I am biased, but I think, independent consulting is definitely the best path, and it sort of aligns with the way that, um, people are moving and our society is moving more towards wanting to have control over their life. And there's a lot more flexibility and control that comes with independent contracting. But I guess it's not all sunshine, lollipops, and roses, right? There's definitely some hard aspects to it. And again, I apologize. I did sort of skip over introducing Eric because I assume everyone on the call knows who
Everyone knows me.
everyone knows Eric.
Yeah, yeah.
But Eric is our strategic partner at IT360, who their job is to help you guys also, organize your finances, create wealth, and transform wealth into a legacy. They might have a slightly different mission, but truly there is an aligned goal to help independent contractors because it's not all sunshine and lollipops, and there is some parts that can be a little bit overwhelming for people who are new to this program. And Eric's expertise lies in the sort of financial planning and some insurance aspects of it. So, Eric, you want to tell them a little bit more about what IT360 is and how you help independent contractors?
Yeah, the IT360 financial team has been around for 15 years now. And what we do is we help IT consultants across the country to minimize the amount of taxes that they pay, both at their corporate level and personal level, and help them also in collaboration with you as the accountant to pass with flying colors some of the tests that CRA may have them go through, like the misclassification test. So this is what we've been doing for a long, long time. And we like to say that we work with IT consultants from cradle to grave.
Yes.
From the beginning. So what we're going to discuss today with Carlos, the beginning of their career along the way until their retirement and succession planning along the way. So thank you,
Absolutely.
Andrew, for having me, and nice to have you, Carlos, with the team, the Three Musketeers now.
The Three Musketeers, and it's amazing for three young men. It's amazing how much experience we've gathered together. um, but it is really we're excited to have Carlos. And for those of you who are established clients and not necessarily new to independent contracting, Carlos is going to come back with a little bit more in-depth session as well for a second follow-up session for those who are already independent contractors. But maybe Carlos, you can start by sharing with us like what's going on right now in the future of work here in Canada. Is independent contracting, is it still a thing? Is it going to be going away? We see some big shifts in the economy, and that's having some real impacts on the tech world. Is that impacting, your take on whether you should be an independent contractor? Does it make it more viable, less viable? What's going on with the future of work when it comes to independent contracting?
Well, I think more and more companies, corporations are realizing they don't want to have an extensive headcount in their as employees, right? So
Right.
they want to just make sure that they do the job as fast as possible and with the highest return of investment. And that is why companies resort to independent consultants, because they can actually create value right away. I think consulting, if something is going to grow in the coming years, especially right now with all the AI stuff that is coming along, I think consulting is going to definitely explode.
Yeah, and I mean, from my experience, when we go through uncertain financial times like we are in right now, what we tend to find is that many companies will usually staff down on the full time and staff up on the independent contractors, because the benefits that come with independent contracting from the client's perspective is that it is for a contract, and if the economy shifts or changes, they don't have the severance obligations that they would have with full-time employees that come along. And again, I'm speaking from a strictly Canadian perspective. If there are any Americans dialing in, obviously the severance obligations in the US are vastly different than they are here in Canada. But here in Canada, that is certainly one of the things that corporations worry about, is like, hey, am I going to start a massive project in the middle of, a downward projected market? Well, maybe not. Maybe I'm going to hold off on those big projects, but I still need to get work done. How do I staff up and I deal with that? And independent contracting is really sort of one of the key ways that they can do that. So if that's the,
It
sorry, go
gives them
ahead.
the flexibility to
Yeah,
hire them and let them go when the project is over, and that is very important for corporations.
absolutely. And if corporations, have that flexibility and they have some cost savings because they're not going to have the severance obligations that they have, what is it that draws the actual contractors to independent consulting?
Well, I would say basically I would say they need to advance your career. Generally, when you are an employee, you have to follow your performance review and you have to follow up all year. And then at the end of the year, you are rated the highest, and then 2% in salary. Complete disappointment. Everybody, after they go through a full year of revision and meetings and goals, then they come back, well, you're going to get a 2% if you're lucky. And then you are like, well, I did all this work and I get 2% and I feel stagnated. Like I don't feel I'm growing. So this is one of the reasons why people decide, you know what? I want to become a consultant. Just last year, I helped two people that they were in the corporate world, and they were tired. So they said, I want to try. I want to become an independent consultant and see where it takes me. Well, it took me 2 months, meetings with them, and after that, they found a job, and it's all year they've been working as a consultant, and they're the happiest they ever been because they have the freedom, they have the money, and they're doing all the financial planning that comes with it.
Right.
To add to that also, yesterday I was meeting a client here in Montreal, and she's a young consultant, but she didn't know much about how much to charge. So a rule of thumb, and you can argue with me, Carlos or Andrew, but she was receiving as an employee, okay, before $150,000 a year. So my rule of thumb, after 15 years doing the same thing, guiding IT consultant across the country, there's usually between 30 to 40% addition that they should ask to be a consultant. So she was receiving, let's say, $70 an hour. I said, yeah, you're short, because if an employer is willing to
Yeah.
pay you $150,000
Why
a
would you take
year,
a contract for less?
your value on the market is probably 180. So 180 is probably closer to $100 an hour, and she was a little bit flabbergasted, and this is what's important today for you, Carlos, is coming from you to help the audience that are maybe at the beginning of their career or thinking about jumping, and making that leap of faith into consulting, to give them as much education that we can.
Eric, actually, that's actually a very good point that you make. My book has some additions into my book, and actually, I have one document that explains how to calculate your rate. And I agree with you. It's between 30 to 40% that you need to actually have overhead your permanent employee, your permanent role as a salary. And normally it takes 35 just to make it half. 35, and then you do the calculation. You need to know your worth before you actually sit down with a recruiter, because they will play you like a violin. My first experience as a consultant, I was actually making $50 an hour, and I thought I was making millions of dollars until somebody from my team told me, you are not getting what you're supposed to be paid. You're supposed to be paid between $75 to $80 an hour. And I just fell out of the floor. So you need to know your worth before you actually talk to the recruiters and you apply for jobs. Very important.
And well, I certainly agree with you guys, absolutely wholeheartedly. And especially from the accounting side, where I know in addition to that 30 to 40% more, you're also keeping more of what you're paying because of the tax advantages. But to play devil's advocate here for a second, why would someone leave the security, quote unquote, security of a paycheck to start consulting? Is, 30 to 40% more, is that really the only reason that you would move or consider consulting?
Well, I say you will have the freedom to choose the projects and the companies that you want to work with. You have all the extensive tax reduction that you will actually pay. And basically, you will have control of your own life, your own career. I think those are three big factors why I actually try to convince people to become an independent consultant.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Like, I mean, the financial benefits are there, and Eric can give you a long list of strategies that he can implement for small business owners that he just are not available in the same way for full-time employees, and myself as well. But I think what we always sit down when we talk to clients, and what I say in life about everything, is never let the tax tail wag the dog, and that you want to be looking at what is your motivation for being an independent consultant. And quite frankly, if it's just for better hourly rate, I think you need some additional benefits to stick with it, because obviously people have fear of being able to find that next contract, and that can be valid if you're not good at what you do. But I mean, in this day and age, you should be applying that same fear over to being an employee, because we're seeing mass layoffs. There's no security in full-time employment either. And, I've always said and maintained for years that your only security is your skill set and your relationships.
I agree with you. I mean, look at what happened 2 weeks ago. Scotiabank were announced layoffs. And I know people that were laid off from Scotiabank after 20-something years. They were given a little box. Okay, thank you very much. Bye-bye. Job security is a thing of the past. I think my parents' generation, where there was the last generation that actually started a job, and 30 years later they retire comfortably, and they say, okay, now I can continue living my life. That doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. So if someone's now interested in becoming a consultant, they're going, okay, wow, there's more money, there's more flexibility, this job security is just a myth. do they need to have any qualifications to become an independent consultant? How do they actually get started?
Not really. There are no mandatory certifications to become a consultant in most industries. I guess first and foremost, what really matters is that you are able to deliver value to a particular organization. And then, yeah.
Awesome. And in fact, we've already got our first question coming in from the audience. If you don't mind taking a question here, Carlos. And they ask, what freedoms does consulting give you that a traditional job wouldn't? And I've got a biased perspective, but I'd love
Yeah,
to
exactly. I wanted to jump and speak, but I will let Carlos at the first shot at the net, Yeah.
Well, I guess the most important freedom is freedom to choose what companies and what technologies and projects you want to participate or collaborate in. Sometimes when I apply for roles, I get, 3, 4, 5 different options. And at the end, I decide, well, do I want to be on a fast and new technology? This is what I always ask. Put me in a project where I'm in the latest technology or something that is brand new so I can learn, and then later monetize that experience to my next job. That's one of the beauties to being a consultant, that you are never, your learning process never ends, and you can remonetize this in your next job. Well, you control also your future. You're controlling your retirement, you're controlling your savings, and you're controlling, a bright future for later on.
Yeah.
There's 2 things I would like to add is average, okay, after tax, when we do a good job with an IT consultant compared to a regular employee, Carlos, employee at whatever job, and Carlos, IT consultant, roughly, okay, there's $35,000 more per year in his pocket, okay? So it's not pocket change for either retiring richer or retiring sooner. And it's also the flexibility on time off. So with big corporation, you will be lucky when you reach that, 5 weeks vacation, woohoo! But a lot of us in Canada are not originally from Canada. Carlos, you're from Venezuela. We have a big crowd of people coming from all over. But when you want to go back home, to visit, sometimes you want to take a month and a half, you can work remotely, and you can decide, no, you know what, this summer I'm not taking any contracts, because anyway, at the end of the day, 10 months of consulting, it's like 12 months of being an employee. So it adds a lot of flexibility on also, do I want to work 12 months of the year for those beautiful 5 weeks of vacation? Or no. When I want to take time off, I want to go back, see my mom. I take time off and I go see my mom.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's so many aspects of flexibility that comes into this. And, the one point, again, it's interesting that we all see things slightly differently with slightly different lenses. And, your points are all valid. But one other point that I would make is, looking at personal service business issues, which we always do, one of the key differentiators between an independent consultant and a full-time employee is that employers are not allowed to exert control over your process. So the definition of a personal service business would say that, if your end client is exerting control over your process, that you are not an independent consultant. What that means is that they're allowed to control the outcome of the process. And the analogy I always use is a painter of your house. You certainly are going to tell him what colors you want and what rooms to paint, but you're not telling him whether he's taping the lines or cutting the lines, right? That process aspect is his skill set and his flexibility. So this means you have control over what that process looks like, even within large organizations. Now, there are still things that you might not have control over, like you're not bringing in your own device into Scotiabank, for example. There's certain real world limitations to that. But you certainly have more control over what that process of your day-to-day looks like. And if you have clients trying to exert that level of control over you, push back and you say, look, I'm not an employee, I'm an independent contractor. And quite frankly, if you start exerting controls over me like I'm an employee, I'm at risk of being deemed an employee, and you're at risk for all the labor regulations that go along with an employee. So you don't want that, and I don't want that. Let's focus on the deliverables and making sure I'm delivering the output that you have requested.
We have another question also, Andrew, in the chat.
Yeah, so it says, understood, but what challenges come with that freedom, and how do you handle them? Again, I'm gonna let Carlos go first. So Carlos, the question ultimately is, so yeah, great, it gives you freedom, but wouldn't there be challenges with that freedom, and what challenges do you see from your lens?
Well, of course, everything in life has challenges. I guess for me, there are two main challenges. One is to actually get a pipeline in place, make sure that you can actually find contracts. I think that's the big challenge at the beginning. But then as soon as you set up your pipeline and you actually create your network, then that will roll quickly and easily. And the second would be the financial structure. It is imperative that you are very well organized and you get advice from people who really know what they're doing. And so that means accountants that really deal with independent consultants, not just an accountant that does the convenience store, the accounting for the convenience store from the corner. You really need to have the best people on your corner, making sure that you're actually going to do everything by the book and you're going to pay the least amount of taxes as possible.
Okay, I'll pay you for that plug later. But I mean, I'm completely biased, but I couldn't agree more that that one of the biggest challenges is that now you are most likely going to be incorporated, because it's typically the best structure for independent contractors. And with that comes filing obligations and it's amazing to me how many amazing, brilliant IT people I have that the minute I talk to them about accounting and finances, the blinders come up and I get shut out and they don't want to deal with it. And it's also amazing to me how many people will come to me 3 or 4 years down the line and be like, I haven't done my taxes, which is like it happens all too frequently. And I would say one of the biggest challenges that comes with being an independent contractor is that there is no tax withholdings. That means that your employer is giving you all the money and they're expecting you to be a big boy and put your money aside for your taxes. And it's really easy to not understand that and get to the end of the year and not have enough money set aside to pay your taxes. So, again, my lens is very biased, but that I would see as the biggest issue. Second only to the fact that you do need to maintain relationships with a combination of recruiters, hiring managers, other IT consultants who might refer you and recommend you, because that is going to be the lifeblood to your longevity in being an independent contractor. But the caveat to that is that's true whether you're an employee or an independent contractor.
Well, it is, but your employer normally takes the tax with all the taxes and pay the government. At the end,
I meant the networking side, I should say.
Yeah. But it's really imperative to be very organized in the financial portion of it. And if you do that, as Eric said, you could save up to $35,000 only in taxes, plus all the deductions that you have because you have a corporation. So that's great.
Yeah. Eric, do you have anything else to add on that?
The early on in my career, I had because when you create a company, that company, even if it's your company, it's separate from you as an individual.
Yeah.
Early on, met a client, and he incorporated a year or so before we met. And at the time, we were not doing Teams meeting before COVID. We were meeting people in the house and we were meeting people at their workplace, And the guy was so excited to show me the brand new kitchen that he did, remodel everything, $100,000, Said, where did you take the money? Oh, in the corporation. I said, yeah, but you will have to pay tax, buddy, on that, And it was like, for me, it was a shocker because the guy, smart guy, most of the IT consultant that we work with, I have way more degree than I will ever hope to have. But the guy had a tough time to understand that his company and him were two separate things. He pulled out $100,000 to do the remodeling of the kitchen, and was like flabbergasted when I said, yeah, but buddy, you're gonna have a big tax hit,
You
because
should
when
have
you're
taken a
gonna tell
loan
that to your
instead.
accountant, he's not gonna be happy.
Yeah.
So I read your book, Carlos. By the way, great job. It was fun to go through it and everything. Very, very great tips for a guy that would like to start. And even when you've been at it for a while, it's good to see where you're coming from and some of the mistakes that were done and things like that. So what's great with your book is it's almost like a roadmap to help people not to do some of the mistakes that could have been done using your expertise, but it's not rocket science. Carlos said it, if you team up with people that know what they're doing, they've been working for a while, with IT consultant, and you have a good circle of professionals around you, it's not the end of the world to run a consulting business.
No, it's pretty straightforward. If you have the right team in place, right? But I guess Carlos, you've shared with us sort of, who can potentially be an independent contractor and whether you need to have any, qualifications to this. But what does it actually take to be an independent consultant? And more specifically, is there one skill that every successful consultant has that a standard employee might overlook?
Well, I guess what I talk in my book is I have a little bit of a self-reflection at the beginning of my book where I basically ask a few questions that you have to ask yourself, like, am I adaptable? And can I learn fast under pressure? Do I communicate clearly? And am I a problem solver? These are like 4 basic questions. And if most people say yes, that means they have, a little bit of what it takes to become a consultant because they answer yes to these questions. And I think the most important skill really is problem solving. This is what companies actually look for. People are going to come, solve the problem, and move on. And this is by far the best skill they could have. And of course, then it will come with the rest of the stuff will come with experience. But problem solving, I would say, is the first skill that companies look for.
Absolutely.
What I always say to my clients, also is the desire to stay relevant. Okay,
Yeah.
because in technology, things move really, really, really fast. And if you think that, okay, I learned what I had to learn and I will serve that way for the rest of my life.
I'll be a Fortran programmer for the rest of my life.
Yeah. It's not going to work like that. It may work like that as an employee, because there's a little bit more, they're a little bit more forgiving. But if you want to be a successful IT consultant, make more money and increase your rate, systematically, you need to have that desire to remain relevant. And to remain relevant, you need to be ahead of the parade, and have that urge to learn new things, and be aware of what's out there.
Yeah,
I agree with you. I agree with you, Eric. You need to be relevant. You need to have that thirst for learning. I want to learn. I want to progress. I want to grow. And again, you can then monetize that experience for your following jobs that you actually want to get.
Yeah, it's a thirst and a passion, right? It's because at the bottom line is when you're done your 9 to 5, your 5 to 9 is often exploring and playing with new pieces of technology that are not part of your 9 to 5 that are going to help you get that next 9 to 5. And if you don't last, if you lack passion and curiosity about the industry that you serve, it's going to be really hard to be a successful long-term independent consultant. I'm not saying you can't get a consulting gig. You can get a consulting gig for probably last, 1, 2, maybe even 5 years. But at the rate of change that going on with technology, if you haven't adapted your skill set and evolved with the industry, you're going to have a difficult time finding that next contract in that 5 to 10 year cycle. Whereas one of the things that you might find with an employee, and this is where I think that perceived security is that people can get by as an employee doing the bare minimum until the company is in trouble, and then they go from whoever's doing the least goes out first, right? And so you get maybe a little bit more grace, and they're not doing that out of kindness. They're doing that because they've done a cost benefit analysis, being like, you doing a half-assed job is worth more to me than the severance obligation that I have. That's it. That's the it's true, right? Like,
it's an accounting calculation.
it's an it's a cost benefit calculation. They're like, yeah, this guy's half-assing it, but at least I'm getting something out of him. If I fire him, he's been here 20 years. I'm going to have to pay him, 20 months of severance. You know what? Let him do a half-assed job, and we'll bury him in the basement in some boring shit. Right? And your career will slowly digress. You'll never get another raise, but you keep your job, right? Until there's enough of you in that organization that have damaged the culture of that organization, and now the company's in trouble and they're doing mass layoffs.
Yeah.
That's what happens, right? It's like you can see that in the trajectory, and there are a lot of people who are happy out there to do the bare minimum, and at 5 o'clock they're checking out, and they don't give a shit what the fuck that means for the, pardon my language, but they don't care what that means for the company. But they don't realize that the impact you have on that company directly affects your career in the long run, whether you're an employee or an independent contractor. And going back to my earlier question, I would say one of the key differentiators is there's also vision. I think independent contractors have a vision and recognize that by helping the company to succeed, I will too succeed, because the best way to raise the tide of your own ship is to raise the tide of other people's ships, because you'll be a part of that growing momentum. But again, maybe a biased perspective. And maybe this is a good time. We do have some polls in the audience. I know you've, and these are thanks to Carlos. It was his suggestion we don't do a lot of polls. I might run a quick poll, and you can, like or share it in social media if you're watching on social media. But if you're in the audience, I'll start a poll here if I can figure out how to do polls. Polls and quizzes, there we are. And the first poll is raise your hand if you know someone who is thriving as an independent contractor. And let me launch that poll. I can raise my hand. Eric, I know you can raise your hand.
Oh, yeah. I know one or two.
Yeah, you know one or two. I'm pretty sure, Carlos, you know a couple. And surprise, surprise, we're getting a pretty solid 100%. Yes, I know some independent contractors. And we'll leave that up for just a minute, and we'll continue to get some poll answers. As we talk for sort of the next steps. So how do you actually make it real here? Oh, interesting. We do have our first response that they don't. So, again, for those of you who are answering no, I'd love to know, do you just not know independent contractors, or do you know independent contractors who are struggling? Because there are independent contractors out there who struggle, and it's usually for the biggest reason is outdated skill set, right? Or outdated skill set. The other one I'd say is too long a gap in your experience. Like you haven't worked. There seems to be a magic number. It's like 6 to 12 months. You don't work for 6 to 12 months, it becomes increasingly harder to get that next contract for whatever reason, which is why, I mean, the good contractors that I know, they're networking, they're building relationships while they're on contract so that they have a contract on the go. Some do rely on recruiters to keep them busy, and a good recruiter is going to know that your contract comes up in December and they're already speaking with the hiring manager. Now, usually they're biased to keeping you to renewing your contract at the same client, which may or may not be in your best interest. But at least they're trying to line up that next contract to make sure that you're staying on contract. And one of the things is, and this, I'm just going to share a bit of insight about how the staffing industry works for those who are not familiar with it, to know and understand how a recruiter gets paid if they're placing a full-time person versus an independent contractor. So if they place a full-time person, they get a lump sum check up front. And if the client works out, if the employee works out, great. There's usually some sort of like 3 month, 6 month, replacement. If they don't work out in that short period, they'll replace them for free. But fundamentally, after that, the recruiter doesn't care about you. They're not going to be checking in with you again. But if you're an independent contractor, the recruiter gets effectively a percentage of every invoice that you do to the end client, which means they have a direct incentive to make sure that your contract gets renewed at the end of the cycle, because if you're not getting paid, they're not getting paid. So they want to keep you on that industry. So now, I apologize. I was just about to ask Carlos how you actually make it real and take it from plan to action. But before I do that, Carlos, we got another question that snuck in here. What do you see the consulting industry heading in the next 5 to 10 years? Carlos, do you want to answer that first, or do you want to tackle the action plan first? I'll let you decide. Or sorry, Eric. I said Eric. I meant Carlos.
Where I see the 5 to 10 years industry.
Yes, but I meant for Carlos. I said Eric,
Yeah.
but I meant Carlos.
No
Sorry.
problem. Go ahead, Carlos.
Yes, so I definitely think that the consulting industry is going to continue to grow. Up to this point in Canada, there are over 2 million people that are actually independent consultants, and I think that trend definitely is going to continue to grow. Again, because companies don't want to have a big headcount, technology is advancing too far, and also people, I've met many of us, but many of employees, they are realizing that perhaps employers are not really looking at their best for them, and they want to actually, try to take control of their finances, of their career, and start, because they have the experience, they want to start their own business and benefit from all the benefit from everything that actually comes with living a corporate life.
Yeah. Eric, I'll let you give your 2 cents in it as well.
I think it's a growing career path. Okay,
Yeah.
I mean, when I started, I don't remember exactly how many IT consultant there was, but every year we see, even if there's a dip sometime with the economy cycle, it's a growing business model. One thing that I can share is you need to understand that, yes, it may happen during a 10-year span that because of the economy cycle, that as a consultant, you may have what we can call not dry patch, but a little bit slower years. But
harder to find contracts.
Yeah, harder to find, yes, during COVID, we were missing so many consultants, I think there was 25% of chairs that were empty, so it was crazy. But that was great, now the market is a little bit tighter, but at the end of the day, it's a growing business model, and I think it will continue to grow, honestly.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, what we see is, setting aside the Uberification of jobs in general, which we're seeing DoorDash, Uber Eats, more and more, let's call them contracting roles at the lower end of the spectrum. So what we're seeing is more and more people having either a need or a desire to move towards having more freedom and flexibility over their schedule. We also are seeing massive pushbacks on return to work, which, again, as an independent contractor, your employer can't force you to return to work. Of course, if they're not happy with your output, they can terminate you. But you're going to see more, I think, people shifting to independent contracting from a desire standpoint of wanting to go that route because of those control aspects that we've seen, and that people have come to realize that they can deliver their deliverables from home just as effectively as they can from being in an office, sometimes more effectively because there's less distractions and less other stuff, and they don't have to deal with the commutes and the transportation and the parking and all that fun stuff that goes along with working downtown. So we're seeing it, like you see it in the news on a daily, like people pushing back against return to work. I personally believe that that is going to see a shift and a rise in more consulting roles, or at least more interest in the roles from the end client's perspective. I also see that because of the uncertain financial times and what's going on politically and economically, that more businesses are going to be uncertain, which, again, as we said, we tend to see those cycles, which uncertainty tends to push more towards independent contracting. I know from the work that we have been doing with Access and NACCB that there's lobbying going on at the provincial and federal levels to the governments to iron out some of the bugs, because we do have some bugs in the fact that there are issues, and we've talked about this before, about employee law being different from tax law, and there being issues along that. But those issues are being ironed out. The government itself acknowledges that society is moving more towards the independent contractor model at all levels, low income, higher income. So there's a demand from that perspective. And so that flexibility is good for the clients. And I also see, thanks to the combination of AI, which I think will lower the total demand for all jobs, period. And again, that's a hot take that not everyone's going to agree with, but I personally believe it will lower the demand for all jobs across the universe, because there's at the last Access conference, there was a great session on artificial intelligence, and don't mind my diatribe here for a second, but Ken McRae got up on stage, and he's one of the big shots over at Procom, large staffing agency, and he said AI is like a bicycle for your mind. It allows you to go 5 times faster, but it's no good without your mind, right? Like if there's no rider on a bicycle, that bicycle ain't going anywhere. And I thought that was a great analogy. But nonetheless, if AI allows me to go 5 times faster, that means I need 4 less people next to me, right? That's just a bottom line. And his argument was, oh, we'll just deliver more and there'll be more projects. I'm like, I'm a bit of a pessimist from that perspective. And I know that if companies can cut costs, they will. So if they can get by with delivering what all they're delivering now with less people, that will be a factor. But that's a hot take that's contentious. But what I do also think will happen with AI is it's going to enable more small businesses to compete against larger businesses, which I think means that they will be bringing on more team members to help them build out AI technology. And we're going to see small businesses investing into technology and needing consultants who they're not going to need forever. Like, come in, help me build this project, and then go away. Right? Like that. So I think that shift in itself is going to see a rise in small business ownership and the need for more independent consultants. But these are opinions.
Well, I would like to contradict you only one point. Going back to the office now has become a norm and a rule. And sometimes as an independent consultant, I even have to write in my contract that I will go to the office certain times of the week, 3 times a week. So that portion, I cannot disagree with you.
Yeah, that and the thing is that, well, technically they and by the way, you should never put that in your contract, and you should push back, because that's a level of control on the process that could be dangerous for you as personal service business. However, their client is well within their rights to be like, well, if you're not coming in, you're not an effective independent contractor, so you're tossed. So you're probably right that the work from home may not be enough of a differentiator, but I think certainly from the other factors, it's going to drive a little bit more. But believe it or not, before we go on, there's lots of questions. This obviously means we're hitting a good topic here. We got one coming from YouTube. Carlos has highlighted that the most important, we got a couple coming in, most important rule to focus on your value proposition in order to optimize customers' needs. I don't hear a question. That's more of a statement, but you know, any thought or feedback? I tend to agree that it is your value proposition. One other thing, I'll let you. I'm terrible about that. Actually, why don't I just let you answer, Carlos, and then I'll share my anecdote after.
Well, definitely you need to define what your niche is going to be for consulting and what is your value proposition. You need to define what the problem you want to solve and for whom. This is the step number one before actually becoming a consultant. I think that's basically what this person is trying to say.
Yeah. And, I think it's like knowing your value and problem solving are the things that you've hit on to me that I think you couldn't be more right on. I was actually watching a TikTok the other day of this guy who was recommending strategies on how to find your next gig. And he said, what successful people do differently than non-successful candidates in the interview process is they come prepared with research, which we all know we should do, but not necessarily research on like, okay, what's the company name? Who are the CEOs? But understanding the company and its issues and coming prepared with a problem that you have identified and a solution to that problem. And I mean, that's the real value proposition that you have as an independent contractor is your ability to solve problems and your ability to identify those and coming prepared to the sit down with a hiring manager of like, look, I'll go through all the things when they ask you if you have any final questions. Well, have you ever considered this to be an issue? Yes, we have. Absolutely. Well, this is what I'd recommend. And you know what? If you'd like, we can get started on a short 3-month contract and I'll solve that problem for you. And if you like me, you can hire me for a 6-month contract or 12-month contract or, God forbid, a full-time employment role. And I thought that's such a brilliant strategy because if I was doing an interview process and I sat down with someone and I was, everyone else, and this guy asked me at the end of their interview, have you ever thought of that as a concern? Odds are I'm going to be like, yeah, that's an issue. Or, if not, maybe we talk through why it is or is not. And if he's coming into that meeting with a solution and offering me a short-term contract to prove his ability to solve that problem, that's a no-brainer. I'm saying yes, and I'm not interviewing anyone else that day.
I agree with you. Your prospect bosses, they wanna hire you to solve the problems. You get hired, you're given the material, read it, and go to your quarter and do your job. I don't know what it takes, but do it. And that's exactly our reality.
Absolutely. So we got one more question here, and then I'm going to get into the making it real section. I promise, Carlos. So last question here is looking back, and I think this is actually a great question.
Yeah.
Looking back, what do you wish you knew before you started?
What do I wish I knew? Well, I guess that consulting would be the path to take. This is one of my, if I call it regrets, I wish I took this decision earlier in my career. I actually met people that all their entire professional career was doing consulting, and they are doing amazing. They already retired. It was much faster for them, and you see the resume. They had the opportunity to work with very good companies and very good projects. And for me, I mean, I'm a convert and as a consultant. And if something, I will tell people, please become a consultant, and you're gonna enjoy your life, and you're gonna make sure that you hit your retirement goals sooner than the rest of the people. If you are organized and if you have very good advice from professional people.
Yeah, because I'd say the only people who fail at independent contracting, in any significant number, are those people who are disorganized, not keeping up with their taxes, and then they're like, "This is terrible! I can't believe I have to pay $10,000 in tax." And we're like, "Well, that's like 8% of your revenue, and you would have paid 54 if they were withholding it." And I couldn't agree with you more on the trajectory of that. But when it comes to making this real, you've done a great job of outlining in your book, a plan to action. But if we were to give the elevator version of that plan to action, how do someone who's listening to this call and going, you know what, you guys have sold me. I want to be an independent contractor for the rest of my life. Where do I begin?
Well, I guess where you have to begin is just by incorporating yourself. Well, actually, before incorporating yourself, as I said before, you need to define what your niche is going to be, what your value proposition, and based on that, you can definitely go and then incorporate yourself, either provincially or either federally. You create your company, you register, you get a business number, then you have to go open a bank account for your company and set up your accounting processes and get a professional liability. This is actually very important. And after that, then you just have to basically create your storefront, your professional identity. So you need to, first of all, have a very good resume that will actually speak to prospect employers, but a resume for a consultant. Generally, resumes as a permanent employee, there are maximum 2 pages, and you have to compress and try to make the least with the most with the least space. A resume for a consultant, you have to. It's sort of like a portfolio. You need to display all the projects that you've been participated in, all the companies that you work for. That's really, really important. Then after that, then you also have LinkedIn. Your LinkedIn profile must be up to date and must be really positioned for consulting. And finally, I guess maybe you can set up your own website if you want to do that. It's not mandatory, but you can create a website where you can actually share what your description of your services, and it can be also a way for people to actually come and see what kind of work you do in companies.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. Like, first, like, defining your niche is it's so easy to gloss over that and not realize how actually critical that is. Like, knowing who your target market is. Like, am I going to be working at banks in QA? Am I going to be working in insurance companies? Am I a front end developer? Oh my God, what just happened? Oh, sorry. I think I'm still here. I thought my computer was crashing. I was panicking there.
We're good. We're good.
Yeah, we're good.
We're all here. We're all here.
And figuring out who your niche is, because that's going to ultimately define how you set up your LinkedIn profile, how you anchor and adapt your resume. And even though your resume might even slightly be tweaked for different roles, but you're going to have that core resume based around who your niche client is. And the more that you know and understand that niche and the problems they face, and then your ability to solve those niches, then the greater your ability to succeed as an independent contractor, in my opinion. So, I mean, I think those points are absolutely critical.
The more you show on your resume, the more you show that you're adaptable and that you are actually a fast learner and that you can deliver results. That's the bottom line.
Yeah. And we got some more questions coming in from Don Shepard, an existing client and independent contractor. He says, do you distinguish between task contractors and true consultants? So it's actually interesting. I've never heard the term task contractor. He follows that up with, isn't one of the key starting points is getting your first contract, incorporating, etc., can come later. And what I would say is the incorporating can certainly come later. And one thing I would say is don't spend money on incorporation until you've got a contract and it's going to pay for it. But I would say a conversation with an accountant, and most of us do offer a free initial consultation. Sit down, understand what are your options available, because you might be able to work as a sole proprietor, which fewer and fewer end clients are willing to do. But it might be possible if you're dealing with some small clients. But even if they're willing to do it, it might not be the best structure for you. But a lot of that depends on your own personal financial situation. So you can certainly sit down with an accountant and sort of map out what would this look like. And we've got a whole bunch of tools and calculators that we've got to show you how you compare like a full-time salary against an independent contractor rate and what will be in your pocket at the end of the day using the two scenarios. So that I think that aspect you're right. I don't, and it looks like for your task contracting example is government contracts versus headhunters. And yeah, maybe Carlos, you were familiar with that terminology.
Sorry, I never heard that term before.
Yeah,
Generally, you're a consultant, and that's the end of the story. You participate in projects and you bring them to fruition, and then you go.
Yeah, I would say it's. I wish it were the end of the story because there is issues. I mean, this is one of the other things that you do have to be aware of is personal service business. And there is something in personal service business called contract of service versus contract for service. And that's a differentiator from the employee versus independent contractor, which again, I'm not going to go into the weeds on that because we do a whole new other session next week. So if you want to get into the weeds of that, come next week and we'll talk about that. But I mean, whether you're a task, again, not being familiar with this term, but I'm going to assume if you're on contract at a government facility, if it's a short contract versus more longer term contracts, to me, there's still ultimately no differentiation. What the differentiation is, you have a different niche. So like if your end client is government, you're going to be tailoring your resume a lot differently, and you're going to be working directly with agencies because that's the only way you're getting into a government role. Whereas if your target niche is maybe it's small businesses and helping them set up, automations, which could be a contracting role as well. Completely different market, probably shorter contract terms, and maybe even dealing with multiple end clients at the same time. Whereas if you're at the government, you're not going to have multiple clients at the same time if you're on a government contract. Unless you're that company who was working multiple contracts when he shouldn't have. And yeah, that's all another issue. Sorry. And I apologize. I go on these diatribes, Carlos, and you'll learn. Eric just lets me go. But you feel free to interject anytime. But what about finding opportunities? I'm throwing it out there. Maybe it's direct to clients, maybe it's end clients, or maybe it's recruiters. Again, biased perspective from your world. What are the ways that people should be looking for clients? Do you prefer working with recruiters or do you prefer working with direct clients?
Well, there are only two, as far as I know, there are two forms to actually find contracts or clients, either through recruitment firms or directly with clients. The way that I use mostly is through recruitment firms. I think that's a little bit better because they already did all the business development. They already have they already know which companies are hiring what profiles. And you just have to give them your resume. And sometimes they call you for like a 10-minute, 15-minute interview to see if, they pass you pass our filters. And then they submit your resume to the client, and the client decides, okay, should I call this person or not for an interview based on what I see on the resume. And this is the way that most people actually use. And then as you get more experience, and if you actually extend your network really wide, and you start knowing some of the people within any organization that you work for, sometimes you can push yourself into the approvisionnement, the department that actually does the hiring. And if you know somebody high up in the company, you might be able to be hired directly, which is actually very good for you because there are no intermediaries. So you demand your rate, and your rate will come to you 100%. And so those are the two ways that you actually find contracts. To this point, I haven't been lucky yet to find a direct client contact, but generally I always work with recruitment firms. And it's important to mention recruitment firms, and I think we said that before, they take a cut. They take a cut on your per hour rate. And so generally, I would say based on my experience, it's between 15 to 20% a fair rate. Anything above that, it's not to your advantage. So you need to, once again, you need to know your worth before you're actually going to have a conversation with the recruiter, because they will play the violin and they will make you cry, and you will lower your rate.
Yeah. And so one of the other things too is, and my understanding, if there's any recruiters listening into the call, I'd love to. Next time I'm going to see about maybe bringing a recruiter in on the next call as well. But my understanding from the recruiting industry is that that rate is set with the client and is not something that's negotiated individually with the person applying. So they're not like trying to squeeze you for an extra point. That they have negotiated with the client and work, and usually because in most situations they're not taking a placement for one role. They're working with companies and taking all their placements in the tech field and placing tons of people, and they've negotiated 10 points, 15 points, 20 points, whatever it is. And then that's going to be across the board. And then their job is to fill those roles. So that means that they have done, like you said, a lot of the marketing and sales work up front with you with the end client to get those roles, but you still need to market and sell yourself to the recruiters. And again, this is knowing and understanding your niche, right? Like if your niche is going to be focusing on working with recruiters, the way you market is going to be like LinkedIn and a great resume. But if you're going direct to client, you're going to be doing more, like maybe you're doing social media, maybe you're doing websites, maybe you're doing paid advertising and trying to get in front of those end clients. I'm not going to say which is better or worse. They're just completely different. And it comes back to what you said, Carlos, which is picking a niche, zoning in on it, working 100% at excelling in that, and then hopefully, working through and succeeding. Now, what I would say is that, I mean, I would bias to thinking it's easier to work with a recruiter, but that's probably a biased perspective. But I would say that has gotten harder and harder over the last 10 to 15 years because of the fact that it has, as you've alluded to, Carlos, become this game of getting it past the robots first, right? Before you get to a human. Do you have any tips or strategies on how to write good resumes to get them through those filters?
Actually, not so much, because when you actually apply through the recruiter takes that's one of the advantages of being a consultant. When I apply for a job, there are no ATS. Generally, they're actually recruiters that actually get your resume, and so most times they will call you to see if you actually fit their job profile or not. But they don't have the ATS like a permanent role would do. I have applied for permanent roles in LinkedIn, and I've been, I don't know, candidate number 1 of 3,000. And even though I actually fit the role to a teeth, I get a letter saying, thank you very much, but we're not considering at the moment. We'll keep your resume for future opportunities. And I'm like, what is this? So the advantage with being a consultant is that you have more contact with people. People sometimes call me directly, hey, Carlos, I have this opportunity. Are you interested? Because my resume and my old resume is part of their system. So they start doing calling and then seeing if you're available. So I think in this respect, I cannot really give you more information other than write a good resume that looks professional, that actually explain all your roles and give the good pointers in terms of what were the results that you actually produced for that particular contract. And I would say I like dealing with recruiters because it's like a one-on-one, and they know you know them, and the more that you do business with them, the more they will push you into other jobs that they might have available.
Right. And I think that's all completely valid. And again, you're going to know more about this industry than I do, having a firsthand look at it, whereas mine a little bit more on the peripheral. But what are those, if we're looking back at, the lessons and mistakes that you should avoid and your first year, what's the, actually, maybe let me take a step back. I'd love to hear, what was your very first independent contract role? What lessons did you learn, and what mistakes should people try and avoid for that first contract?
Well, I think I mentioned it before. I think the first mistake that I did in my first contract was undervalue my rate. I literally have zero idea what the rate should be for a consultant. And I went for my interview. Everything went well. Client said, yes, we're hiring. And then when I talked to the recruiter, I said, I don't know what rate. Okay, well, what do you think should be the rate? And I asked the recruiter. And the recruiter told me, I think $50 an hour is actually a good rate for you. And I'm like, okay, good. I did my multiplication and said, okay, I'm going to make $14,000 more what I was making as a permanent employee. Perfect. That's when then 2 months later, I found out that for the role that I was actually making, other people were making $75, $80 an hour. And that was, heartbreaking for me to know that, I did not negotiate well. But I didn't know. Nobody told me. I didn't know anybody that was an independent consultant. So, and I know other people that they got really, really badly rated in terms of compensation. They were making 40% of the rate that they actually charged the client, and that is the first mistake that actually I made. Another one that relying on the same recruiter. I thought when I actually came to become a consultant, okay, I'm gonna make this relationship work with this particular recruiter, and they will find me other jobs whenever they have other jobs or whenever my contract ends, because they already know me. It's like it's gonna work. And then I realized after my contract end, well, my contract is ending, and they're like, well, I'm sorry, we don't have nothing for you. And then you are like taken off guard, like, oh, I think I should have networked more. I should have opened a conversation with multiple recruiters, make sure that my resume is spread out. Not too thin, by the way, but the important recruiters should actually have my resume. I should already have conversations with multiple recruiters. They should know me. They should know Carlos. Okay, if I have another test lead position, I'll call you. That's very, very important. And finally, I guess, continuous marketing. You need to continuously update your resume every time you change jobs. And most importantly, your LinkedIn. Your LinkedIn is basically your storefront. You need to make sure that you share updates, that you start networking with people, that you add new people into your network. That is very, very, very important. And share anything related to your field, news. Keep yourself active, because that way, of course, like in social media, you will appear in somebody else's feed. And, who knows? He might be the person that might help you to find your next contract. So that's actually very important.
I couldn't agree with you more. Now, first of all, I do want to apologize because I know I didn't even notice. I looked down. I'm like, oh, we've ran long. I just got so into the conversation. So thank you, Carlos and Eric, for running a bit long with me. And we'll try and wrap up here shortly. But I couldn't agree anymore, especially on the social media side, specifically LinkedIn. I'm not talking Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and TikTok. LinkedIn. It's the #1 platform used by recruiters. It's actually how we met and introduced ourselves to Carlos, was because of what amazing job he was doing on the LinkedIn platform. And I cannot express enough how important it is to build your profile, and not just I'm not just talking your jobs and your experience, but go in there and provide proof of your interest and things. Like if you want to be working in, I don't know what it is, like whether it's AI or if it's mobile, whatever it is, like you need to be demonstrating that this is you and that you live in this space and that you know and understand it and that you're connected to the who's who in this industry. Because consulting is a massive industry that's divided up a lot of small niches. And those small niches, when you get inside them, you realize everybody knows everybody.
Exactly.
And breaking into those niches can be difficult, but it's not overwhelming, and it is possible. And the best way to do that is by social media. Just be a fly on the wall, listen, figure out who are the players, start communicating, asking questions, and communicating. And that will start to build the social proof that you are someone in this industry that other people are going to want to place.
And of course, the networking portion. I mean, you work with people that in company A today, but tomorrow these people change. So you have a way to actually follow where so-and-so is. And then in the future, okay, I had a good relationship, a good rapport with this person. I'm going to just knock the door and, he's changed jobs. So now I'm going to see if they might need consultants in his new company. So it's very important to actually have a strong network within LinkedIn, but also personally. Sometimes I exchange numbers with my former colleagues, and we are like always sending, SMS. Hey man, how are you doing? Oh, I'm good. I'm in this company. Oh, are you looking for people? No, not right now. Or maybe, yes, send me your resume. So that is very, very important. Networking.
Absolutely. And I see it all the time. It's like some CEO or executive moves from one company to another and they bring their entire team with them. Everyone that they've ever contracted with before in the past, they're like, I know he's good. Let's go recruit him. And that usually means a bump in pay,
Exactly.
typically. But, and again, Don, thank you. He does mention another option for building your career is if you're uncertain about being an independent contractor, maybe you work as an employee at a consulting company and get a bit of a flavor for it, which not a bad idea if you've got that fear, because let's face it, that fear is tangible for some people. I think it's unjustified because I think there's no more security in employment versus consulting. But I can say that till I'm blue in the face. The only way that you're going to believe that is by getting into it. And just like Carlos, who's like, once he became an independent contractor, he's like, I'm never going back. We have seen that with so many of our clients that once they see the benefits of being an independent contractor, whether it's the freedom, whether it's the flexibility with the better pay, they don't want to go back. Usually the only time that someone goes back to employment from a full-time role is they're offered a role on the executive leadership team that typically cannot be offered to an independent consultant. That's usually the only reason that people leave independent contracting.
Actually, I'll contradict you again. There are two reasons why people
Dude.
return to consulting. One, your reputation as a consultant has been destroyed. So you've been going from bad job to bad job to bad job. No recruiter will touch you with a 10-foot pole. That's the first reason. And then the second reason will be if you or your family have some major health issues that you really need a better coverage in terms of health insurance. So people tend to fall back and say, you know what? I
got to tell you, Eric's going to disagree with that one.
Okay.
Yeah, just call me Carlos,
Yeah. We can get you great insurance plans, and often for less than what they're deducting from your paycheck to cover your insurance plan. But I can see that perception, and you're absolutely right. There's definitely some core things.
Andrew, I have a hard stop in 2 minutes.
Okay, so let's wrap up. So Carlos, you shared with us some interesting points to wrap up. So one, first and foremost, you need to decide to clarify your why, your niche, and your goals. Second, you have in here, incorporate and register your business. I'm going to modify that slightly to build your team of professional advisors, which would include an Eric, it would include an Andrew, it would include, an LMS. Like, it's building that team of advisors that are going to help you succeed in the parts that you don't thrive at, which is, the accounting, the insurance, the financial planning aspect. Build that team. Then build your brand, optimizing for LinkedIn and your consulting resume and potentially a website. And I'm going to, again, echo out, I think a website, even for people who are working with recruiters, are great because it helps with PSB. Network, continue to build those relationships with recruiters, with peers, with end clients. And then lastly, secure your first contract. So those, I think, are really great, clear steps. And of course, I encourage everyone here to go and connect with the Consultants Compass. You can join Carlos's community. You could take advantage of his real world guidance and benefit from his 13 years of experience. You can get access to his book. And he's even got a couple of freebies that he's going to throw in free of charge. So Carlos, you want to tell us a little bit about the things that you've offered to share with the attendees?
Well, to make it very simple, I actually created a checklist to incorporate yourself. It's proven. I actually went through some clients with them, so it's proven and done. So I'm sharing that with you because, some people say, oh, it's so difficult to incorporate. I don't know what to do. I don't know. So that checklist will actually help you do that. And the second one is a list of my 50 preferred recruitment firms. So as I said, I find contracts through the recruitment firms. So I'm giving you the homework of that you should be doing, and giving you 50 this list. And actually, it's defined by province and the area of expertise for these recruitment companies. So this will actually help you start up your business and become an independent consultant.
Awesome. And Eric, thank you. Sorry to put you up against the wall. Any final thoughts from you?
No, I thank you very much. Like I said, I have a hard stop at 45. I wish you a very good rest of the day, Carlos. It was a pleasure. Andrew, always a pleasure. Thank you all. See you at the next webinar.
See you. And Carlos, sorry for running long on you. I just got so passionate about it.
Have a good one.
Bye, everybody.